kids are awfully smart. I mean, I look back on my young self, and I was so far ahead of what was going on with people trying to talk to me. I think we can all remember that if we reach way back. Some of us don't have to reach way back. We're there, whatever. I think if you just be open-minded and ask them what they think would be a safe way to act. Ask them if they have any friends, that if there's anyone they know that they think might be vulnerable. Sometimes I do that when I talk with groups. I'll ask and say, do you know anyone that you're concerned about? Because that doesn't put them on the spot. So then if they are vulnerable, they can talk about a friend that is, and then they're not sitting there with a target on them. So I speak to youth at risk and women at risk, and I use that technique. And it's very effective, so you can get a discussion going. And another way is just to ask them if they feel, if they've seen any examples of this kind of thing in their own neighborhood or at their school. Have they read about it? And then you can discuss the things in the story. If there are news stories, sometimes you can use a news story. Am I helping at all?
Yes. One of the things happened to me with one of the with a couple of the girls that said that they had a friend, which I promptly went and told the teacher. And so it is because
it's happening, and
it's happening.
It's happening a lot. And the thing about it is, the thing with this is that the fear and the shame makes it so that victims don't want to report this crime because of the stigma attached. So part of the education that we do is to remove the stigma from the victim. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we don't blame the victim, and so we don't use. One way to engage the kids might be talk about some of the pop culture things that go on, because some of the slang just glorifies the life of
Well, we talk about the
exploitation.
Music. We talk about the music.
Are we done?
No, I just wanted to add something.
Oh.
That it's probably also, thank you, important to try, if a conversation comes up, to try to inquire, is there an adult who you trust, who cares about you, and find that adult. So whether it's a bullying situation or, God forbid, human trafficking, the more extreme situation. Marti didn't want to go to her family. So we have to make sure that people feel they can go to family or find a caring individual. We don't want them to be taken advantage of, and here sadly, at times as a young adult, you were taken advantage of. But there has to be hopefully someone out there so that this young person doesn't feel alone and doesn't feel as vulnerable. And that's an important way of confronting that.
Excellent. Thank you.
I just want to know, did you ever make it to the Tonight Show?
No, I didn't. And I even know Jay Leno. I mean, I knew him back in the day. And it was like, hey, Leno's in charge. No, I didn't. And, you know, I really didn't want to. At a certain point, I got into doing the stand-up, and that kind of revealed another path to me. After a little while of being a stand-up, I went back to school, studied creative writing and communication, and you started getting interested. Then I was educated as a drug counselor, because I began to see, wait a minute, addiction played a really big part in keeping my trauma, fueling the trauma, keeping me from getting help, because addiction isolates you and keeps you, you know, so I wanted to help anyone that I could, and I did. I worked as a counselor for a few years, and I've got a couple people that, yeah, they made it, you know, and every once a year they'll text me, yeah, my credit score is so and so much. I've got this job. I'm still so, and it's like, yeah, you know, score one for our team. You know, somebody came through it. So, and I also do. I do a thing called Laughaholics. It's once a year. It's my show. It's an annual fundraiser. I did it with my fabulous husband. He's sitting over here. The two of us have started it, and it's in the city of Indianapolis, and I don't know why, but it is. And like once a year we have nationally headlining comics and with national TV credits, and they come in and do the show, and we give 100% of the money we raise to transitional housing facilities that provide access to treatment and mental health services. Thank you. It's really fun. It's really fun because when you heal, the healing ripples out. And this is like an example. It's so much fun to do that. And people come to that show, and it's a feel-good show, because you know that all that ticket money is going to a place where they take people at rock bottom, you know? So I have literally laughed my way up from rock bottom, and I'm still doing that, and I'm bringing other people up with me, and it's a beautiful thing. So, didn't make it to the Tonight Show, but in some ways, I think I've had a better deal, you know? We've raised, in 40 years of that show, we've raised almost $30,000, so that's pretty good.
I noticed you were saying earlier that one of the most vulnerable times is when kids are being aged out of foster homes.
Yes.
Is there anything being done for those kids?
Yes, there is. In fact, I speak to Child Protective Services in different cities, and that's their focus. That's the reason they hire survivors to speak. They want to know what the vulnerabilities are. They want to know how to spot the victims and how to protect the kids and all of these things. And there are a lot of people who are survivors of childhood sexual exploitation, trafficking, who make that their specialty. They specialize in the foster care. A lot of them. So a lot of it going on here in California. There's some fantastic places here that are survivor-led. We have Kk&ll here, and I have in this resource thing, I have California Against Slavery. MISSY is, I forget what it stands for. Oh, I put it there. Oh, see, I didn't forget. Thank you. I did a great PowerPoint, didn't I? Cool. Yeah, so MISSY is run by a survivor. It's a survivor created, and they have done so much in the city of Oakland to just turn things around. They're one of the most powerful movers and shakers and helping kids, and so that they're not treated as criminals. Because for a while, this is a mistaken thing. Kids would be treated as criminals, and they'd be acting out, and they'd be angry, and the behavior is not what you expect from a so-called victim. A lot of times people think, well, we want a victim to be like grateful, like, oh, thank you for saving me, I'm a victim. You know, a lot of people don't, I'm not meaning to sound flippant, but I mean, a lot of us who are victims of human trafficking didn't identify as victims immediately. I know I identified as a perpetrator for a while, because I blamed myself, and I thought, well, drugs, and, you know, and I went over there, well, you know, so a lot of times it takes some work, and a lot of times these victims are categorized, in the past were categorized as other crimes. They say, oh, it's a drug addiction, this was an assault, it was domestic violence, it was whatever, and they were jailed for those things. And children, same thing. So, good question. Yes, it's happening. Support social services. That's what I'd like to say to people. Support your social services. This is where it's happening. I mean, we need to have strong social services. Thank God we're in California. Oh my gosh, you know, we've got resources for people, because that's where it happens. The average victim, they guess that the average victim, while in captivity, comes in contact with first responders in emergency services or some other thing, I mean, ambulance drivers, nurse, doctor. They come in contact with those service providers 6 times during their captivity. And many times, every one of those 6 times, they're not going to come forth and say what's happened to them. But that's part of what the traffickers do. They beat the person down, they tell them that the system is against them, so they've been led to believe that. But now we have medical personnel across the country educating themselves on how to recognize victims so that they can take the steps. So we're making a lot of progress.
As family or as a friend of somebody that is a victim, is there any criminalities that we can identify? I understand that the victims, sometimes they don't want to be identified as such. They don't want to come forward.
Right, because there's so much of the stigma, and there's the shame and the fear.
But I'm sure that everybody has somebody around that loves them, but how do we, is there anything that we can do? Is there something that we can identify that something is wrong?
There's a really good list on Polaris, you know, Polaris, polarisproject.org. And if you look them up, they have a really good list of ways to spot possible indicators. And I don't have them here on this resource. But if it's a young person, there are a lot of things like being isolated, if their grades drop. I mean, there are a lot of things, but those can also be indicators of other things. But if you look, it's a comprehensive list that they have. I would recommend that. Polaris Project is a really good source for answers. Time's up.
Join me in saying thank you.